All right, so moving on to the next segment, we're going to switch gears here from the UFC world into the sport of boxing. And the question I have for you guys today is, should Tyson Fury be stripped of his WBC heavyweight championship? So in my opinion, yes. Tyson Fury should be stripped of his WBC championship. And you guys know how much I love Tyson Fury. And my latest pound-for-pound rankings in the sport of boxing, I have Tyson Fury ranked number 4 as the 4th best fighter in the sport of boxing today. I love Tyson Fury. He's a great heavyweight, one of the greatest heavyweight champions in this modern era. He has a lot to offer. He's a big box office attraction in the sport as well. But he should be stripped of the WBC heavyweight championship immediately, ASAP. The WBC needs to get their hands on Tyson Fury's coveted WBC title, and because Tyson Fury is doing nothing but disrespecting that coveted championship, and I'm going to explain the reasons why. So Tyson Fury is ducking the best competition. Tyson Fury, when he retired in April of 2022, his short-lived retirement, 4 months into his retirement, the WBC gave a call to Tyson Fury saying, if you're not going to be an active fighter, if you are truly retired from the sport of boxing, we need you to vacate the WBC title. Tyson Fury told the WBC that he refuses to vacate his title. Months later, he was back in a boxing ring in the month of December to close out the calendar year 2022. He had a big fight in London, but it wasn't against someone that was a magnitude of being a big monumental fight like he had in his trilogy against Deontay Wilder. It was against Derek Chisora in December when they fought in London, and this was the 3rd time that he's fought him. The 3rd time that Tyson Fury he did a clean sweep on him in the trilogy. There was no need for this trilogy because he beat Derek Chisora twice, and the two respective fighters did not fight each other for a total of 8 years. So this was a massive letdown. It wasn't a great fight. It was a one-sided fight, and something that the sport of boxing really didn't need to see last year. So Tyson Fury, if you're going to come back from retirement, if you still want the big paydays, the big bucks, you need to fight the biggest names in the heavyweight division. And that's responsible for you being the biggest box office attraction in the sport of boxing. You have to give the fans what they want to see. And let's start off with Tyson Fury ducking mandatories. He ducked a massive fight with Anthony Joshua, who's the number 2 mandatory for his WBC heavyweight championship. And the two were in contract negotiations. Contract negotiations fell apart when the two sides failed to agree on a split purse deal. They failed to capitalize on one of the biggest fights in London history, where you have Anthony Joshua, who's one of the biggest names in the sport of boxing in London. Then you have Tyson Fury, who is one of the biggest box office attraction names in any country in the sport of boxing. He's the current WBC heavyweight champion. This has always been a dream fight for these two respective fighters to finally get in the ring with each other. We could be seeing that next, but the contract negotiations fell apart because of the demands, high demands of Tyson Fury. Evidently, I don't believe that he wanted any part of Anthony Joshua, because I do believe that he knows that Anthony Joshua is a threat to him. Then you move on to the second ducked mandatory. He ducked a massive fight against Andy Ruiz Jr., who is currently the number 3 ranked mandatory for his WBC heavyweight title. The fight was in negotiations but was shut down due to the financial demands. Tyson Fury had a problem with the split purse decision in terms of the split purse, which ended negotiations against another former heavyweight champion, Andy Ruiz Jr., canceling 2 fights against the 2 biggest names in the heavyweight division, and the two out of 3 of his top mandatories for the WBC title. And then the ultimate duck that could affect his legacy if he never gets in the ring with him is Alexander Usyk, fighting Alexander Usyk in an undisputed championship fight in the heavyweight division. Something that the heavyweight has never been done in the 4-belt era. Undisputed heavyweight champion. That could have been done when these two fighters were supposed to fight each other months ago in the calendar month of April. This was the icing on the cake to me, that the WBC needs to step in and take action and strip Tyson Fury of his championship, or force him to fight somebody, one of the big names, one of the big mandatories for his title. He's disrespected the unified heavyweight champion in Alexander Usyk, who holds 3 out of the 4 important titles in the sport of boxing in the heavyweight division. And he offered him a disrespectful 70-30 split for an undisputed championship fight that could have been one of the biggest fights of the year. And when it's all said and done, you can't disrespect a man in the terms of a purse of a 70-30 split when he has 3 of the 4 championships in the division. He only just needs your championship to be an undisputed champion. He's willing to do anything that he can to get a fight with you. He's even willing to travel to your own country in London and do it at Wembley Stadium. And you still don't want any parts of that, Tyson Fury. It's disrespectful that this fight didn't happen. You offered the unified heavyweight champion a 70-30 split, and he's a former Olympic gold medalist as well. And you're telling me that he's only worth 30% of the pay that was supposed to be earned in that dream fight? A 60-40 split or a true 50-50 split would have been truly fair to me for that fight to happen. And Tyson Fury was not comfortable. It was another reason why that fight between him and Alexander Usyk fell apart, is he was not comfortable with the rematch clause being in the contract for a potential rematch if Alexander Usyk was to lose the first fight between the 2 respective fighters in their undisputed championship fight. Tyson Fury didn't want a rematch. He wanted to move on completely from Alexander Usyk, and that is the reason why, another reason why the fight fell apart, because he could not get a rematch clause. He didn't want the rematch clause in that contract. And now the icing on the cake is we're not gonna, with all the big fights that's rumored to happen in the heavyweight division in Saudi Arabia in December, where there's talks of Deontay Wilder and Anthony Joshua being very close to being done in December, that you could have one of the biggest co-main events and main events in boxing history. When you have Wilder versus Joshua on the undercard, then you have Alexander Usyk versus Tyson Fury for the undisputed heavyweight titles, and it's not happening because Tyson Fury doesn't even want to fight Alexander Usyk in Saudi Arabia. He would rather fight him in January or fight somebody else in an undisputed championship fight. He wants no parts of Alexander Usyk, and I think if he never fights him, it truly affects his legacy and what he leaves behind in the sport. And now he's in contract negotiations, not with Deontay Wilder for a 4th fight, not with Andy Ruiz Jr., not with Anthony Joshua, not with Alexander Usyk. Out of anybody in the world to be under contract negotiations with for a potential fight, he's in contract negotiations with UFC President Dana White and a potential hybrid boxing versus UFC fight with the baddest man on the planet, Jon Jones. Give me a break. We've already seen this story several times transpire in the sport of boxing. When we have a UFC guy that is not familiar with the sport, trying to transcend himself from the sport of MMA to the sport of boxing, it doesn't translate over well. And we've seen this story plenty of times. Every time this happens, when we get a crossover hybrid fight, the boxer beats the MMA guy because the MMA guy is used to going different increment rounds. They're used to fighting a total of 3 5-minute rounds. Championship rounds, a total of 5 championship rounds. Boxing, the championship fights are expected to go 10 to 12 rounds at 3-minute increments. It's a different sport. It just doesn't play out, and we see the same story every time. The boxing guy wins when the MMA guy wants to come over and get a big payday. And it would be the same thing, vice versa. If boxing guys went over to MMA and tried to get in the octagon with the MMA fighter, it's not going to end well. The MMA guy's going to win. So why are we still getting these silly hybrid fights? We've seen this story happen before when Floyd Mayweather and Conor McGregor got in there. Big payday fight, got the world talking, but the boxing guy won. We see it all the time when Jake Paul's in a ring with somebody. He beats up a former UFC ex-employee. He wins. The boxing guy always wins, and I don't want to see this story anymore. We've seen it several times. Give me a different movie. Give me a Tyson Fury versus Andy Ruiz Jr. Give me a Tyson Fury versus Alexander Usyk. Give me a Tyson Fury versus Anthony Joshua. Why, out of all people, potentially could Jon Jones get a crack at the WBC title when he's never stepped in a boxing ring compared to those 3 names that I just mentioned? That is why Tyson Fury should be stripped of his WBC title. He's disrespecting the title. He's holding the title hostage. and he's holding the whole heavyweight championship. He's holding the whole heavyweight division hostage because you're robbing us of so many dream fights that the sport of boxing deserves to see.